Hello, adventurers, and welcome to Grognard and Friends Special Edition Easter Egg and Bunny Hunt episode. Cellophane grass, Easter eggs, and questionable psychedelic bunnies for everyone. And speaking of Easter eggs, after tonight's session, we are going to spend some time talking about the new Stranger Things trailer for Season 4, since it seems to be very D&D focused, especially this season's villain. Please join via the chat. We would love to spend time with our friends. And speaking of friends, let's check out this week's episode of Grognard and Friends. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us. The reason why we're doing this is before I streamed as a dungeon master, I was an entertainment writer and film critic for a number of years for groups of suburban Philadelphia newspapers. So I like entertainment, I like TV. I used to cover film, TV, and music, and I just thought this would be a lot of fun to do. I'd also like to introduce, this is Claudia Rose. Give everyone a wave there, Claudia.
Hi.
We love her and what she does for Butt Trumpet, our lovely little goblet. She is Butt Trumpet's assistant there, personal assistant, their handler. Claudia Rose is going to join us this evening, and so is Cheryl.
Yep.
As the trailer for Season 4. So before we get started, do either of you have any thoughts on Stranger Things in particular?
Huge fan of it. I need to rewatch it. It's been a really long time, but I have loved watching, like, the kids grow together and all of the characters come into their own gradually, and I do love the combination of whether it's pop culture, 80s references, or just genuinely good writing and compelling characters. It's just a great show, and I'm so thrilled that it's coming back.
Yeah, me too. They've always touched upon D&D from the get-go, which is nice.
It's gotten a lot more people into D&D, I think.
Right. I was just going to say that. I think the influence of this show has really boosted the hobby, which I think is great. And this trailer really goes all out, and the big bad villain of this season just kind of shows the deep dive that they're doing. Oh, I was so excited when I heard this. And just so you know, any of you who haven't seen the trailer or have been trying to keep things secret, lots of spoilers ahead. Because we're just going to be talking about a lot of things here. I have been watching it from the beginning, been really into it. This is the period that they're going after is the period I grew up in. So the references I just love, and the D&D connection. It was great before, but after this trailer, I feel like it's epic. Why don't we hop? Go ahead, Cheryl.
I had actually heard online, some people were theorizing that the entire story itself is based on a D&D game, with the Upside Down being like where the game takes place type of thing, or the fantasy world.
Really?
Yeah, I thought that was an interesting theory.
That is interesting, because I have to admit, I haven't heard that one yet. So that I've heard a lot of theories. The one I've heard most is that the Upside Down is actually the future, where it's a parallel universe of our future where we've basically destroyed our own world, and this is what's left.
Right.
I don't know if I believe that. I'm not sure. But I was just realizing, because of the very beginning here, we have a voice. There's a voiceover, and a lot of people are questioning who it is. Why don't we just get this big spoiler out of the way of who the big bad for this season is? It is none other than Dungeons and Dragons, probably biggest baddies from the very beginning, like
Yeah.
1976, this character was created, when you didn't get the hardcover books that you eventually got in AD&D. You got four little pamphlets, and it was from the one marked Eldridge Wizardry. This, of course, I'm speaking of Vecna. And what's really cool is when I first saw the trailer, I was like, oh, wow, that's awesome. Big Bad's going to be a lich. That's what they're going for this year. You know, not Demogorgon, they're going for a lich. That's awesome. And then I heard an interview with the Duffer Brothers, and they revealed that it was Vecna. And I'm like,
Yeah.
oh my God, because
Yeah.
Vecna is the king of all liches when it comes to it. Well, was the king of all liches, because now they were considered a demigod. That is until Critical Role, because most people watching this who are watching us probably are of an age where they don't necessarily know Vecna from the beginning of D&D so much as they know from Critical Role Campaign 1 and that
Right.
epic final boss battle with Vecna, Vox Machina with special guest Joe Manganiello. Just how epic is that? Even before that, Vecna was always an epic villain in D&D. They were created from the beginning. It was Vecna as an anagram for Vance, meaning Jack Vance, because Jack Vance wrote a book called The Dying Earth, which was used as kind of the template for the D&D magic system, which is, this was a little nod to Jack Vance by naming this king of all baddies after him. There's a little bit of a dispute depending on who you speak with. Most people think it was Brian Bloom that came up with Vecna, but I have heard a number of people say it was Gygax himself. But most of the printed materials say it was Bloom. And anybody who knows anything about TSR's history knows about all the ugliness that happened between the Blooms and Gygax over the years. But that would just take too freaking long. So
long story short, too late.
Too late. From the beginning, you'll hear, or there's a little bit of a voiceover, and some people are saying, "Oh, it's Billy from the afterlife," or some people are saying it's Victor Creel, who we will get into also in a little bit. But I think there's no question it's probably Vecna. So let's get started here.
You've broken everything. Your suffering is almost at an end.
So that's the first view we get of Vecna.
Okay.
His eyes.
Really well lit. Yeah.
Now, one of the things that's cool is if you look at the eyes, they're kind of that milky, icy blue.
Yeah.
Which is kind of cool because Vecna, the makeup and the everything, Vecna was created by the guy who did the special effects makeup for the head of the White Walkers, that creature with the blue eyes, with the crown and everything. The Duffer Brothers just fell in love with his work with Game of Thrones. And he also, I believe, did a lot of the work on these miniseries Chernobyl.
Oh, okay.
And the sad part I think about this is the eyes, I don't think necessarily play a part in the story, because anyone who's familiar with Vecna knows that the two most amazing things about Vecna are his one eye and his hand. But we'll get more into that in a little bit. But backing up, we have what I assume is Vecna saying, you've ruined everything. And then that's obviously that little section beneath Starcourt Mall. That's from the end of season 3, where we thought we lost Hopper. And Joyce was able to get out, and it was, run by the Russians. So, and then immediately we see the grandfather clock that has appeared in so many of these teaser trailers that looks like it's in the attic of the Creel house, which we always love. Now, I'm just going to draw your attention to the gravestone here where it says Billy Hargrove, and that's obviously Max. Also, in that interview with the Duffer Brothers, the Duffer Brothers said that Max is going to be a really big and important part of this season.
I'd certainly hope so. I understood where they were going when they first introduced your character, and they had like the brief bit of mystery of, oh, who's Mad Max, and then you meet Max and everything. And I understand that, you know, her introduction was meant to be like, no, I'm not going to immediately be friends with you. You guys are weird. You're following me everywhere. But I'm very glad that they began to flesh her out way more. I wanted her and Eleven to get closer, and it was really exciting to watch that. And so I'm glad that they're paying attention to like each of the characters individually, especially with the closeness of Hopper and Joyce. I knew that the next season would have to tackle some kind of relationship or bond of some kind between Will and Eleven/Jane in kind of like a step family sort of situation.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah. Anyway,
Keep in mind this gravestone. That's going to play something that we're going to talk about that a little further on.
Dear Billy, I don't know if you can even hear this.
Isn't this cool that this whole scene right here is upside down?
get it?
And there's a body bag there. Now, here's the thing. Pretty much everyone's talking about this being bodies coming out of the Starcourt Mall, but that to me looks like a dirt road. And I don't know about you, but I've never seen a large mall that has a dirt road going to it or a gravel road going to it.
Yeah,
You know,
no,
so
that's just heavily paved.
yeah,
That's a parking lot.
right.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
for like a
this-
mile around.
Yeah, I don't think this is the Starcourt Mall. I think this is something else.
It's not the water again, is it?
That
That would show the cliffs and stuff, like where they
Right.
pulled Will's body out.
over by the quarry.
Right.
Right. Yeah,
So
who
that's be
knows?
another-
Maybe.
If it's not the quarry, I think there's way too much area where people would be fleshing out. There, that looks a little bit too like a park road,
Right.
or like a dirt road through like a normal common public space for it to be the quarry. So it has to be another area where bodies are getting plucked out. Everyone needs to just move out of Hawkins.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, well, we're going to get into that in a second, too. But yeah, I definitely don't think this is the road to Starcourt Mall.
Ever since you left, everything's been a total disaster.
You were talking about everyone moving out of Hawkins. Well, here's Max kind of confirming that Hawkins is just a total mess.
For a while, we tried to be happy.
So then they're showing us kind of how things have gone. We've got Lucas showing that now he's playing sports and he's on the basketball team and looking thrilled to death. And who knows, maybe he's popular now that he's a basketball player.
Is he playing or is he in the crowd watching?
No, Lucas was the one we saw coming onto the court.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, the
This
kids'
is
names, yeah.
Dustin.
And Mike.
Gotcha.
Yeah, Dustin
Yeah.
and Mike, right? Which, like, I'm not ready to watch
Oh.
these kids get older.
Yeah.
Right.
That is
right.
so odd.
Mike just looks like the face looks so chiseled and both of them look not thrilled to be there.
Finn
Yeah.
Wolfhard just morphed. Like, all of the digital editing they had to do for him in It Chapter 2. Because he was just so unrecognizable. It's kind of frightening.
Well, I do like that he's wearing the Hellfire Club shirt. And that's really cool on a number of levels because one, the Hellfire Club is the name of the school's D&D club this year.
Yeah.
Oh.
Now, the Hellfire Club is a reference to an old X-Men series of comics. But what everyone seems to be forgetting is that the Hellfire Club was an actual club I think it was Victorian England in London, and it was a bunch of rich lords and nobles who would gather together at a a gentleman's club, which back then meant something very different from what it means today. You'll find leather, but not on the seats necessarily. One of the cool things I like about Stranger Things is they really nail that high school atmosphere of adolescence. And this is the perfect example where once you start getting into adolescence and you get to high school, things change. Not just your body, not just the way you look at things, but sometimes your friendships. Sometimes they split apart and disintegrate because one person becomes a popular kid. One person joins sports, starts hanging out with those people. And this, obviously, this is what's going on. And one of the other things I thought of, we were talking about Max, Claudia. One of the things I think is really, there's a little bit of irony there is Max is the California skater kid.
Yep.
And when the group split apart, half the group went out to California.
That's right.
And here's Max here in Hawkins from California.
Normal.
Speaking of California,
This is what I was talking about. This, what feels like I thought about this the last season toward the end of it. I wondered if they would try to do a step family sort of thing, because even though Will and Eleven have been in the same group of friends, you haven't watched them interact with each other at any point. It really hasn't been about either of them. You've seen the antagonism between her and Lucas, and you've seen the relationship between her and Mike, but you haven't seen really any kind of bond with them. And if I'm remembering correctly, Rip Hopper, she's become part of Joyce's family. Am I on the right path with that? I don't remember.
Yes, you are.
I thought so. So I genuinely wonder what that's going to look like, seeing the two of them, because they've never really had any kind of established dynamic that I've seen before in previous seasons.
Yeah, that's a very good point.
And Millie Bobby Brown and Noah Schnapp are pretty close friends in real life, I think.
Yeah, I believe
I
you're
think
right.
her friendship with him is way more than her friendship with Finn Wolfhard, even though she had more scenes and interactions with him.
So, speaking of California, we then see the California crew, which is Will and Jonathan and Eleven there, headed in with their science projects. And you'll notice in the back here, the guy with the long hair and the sunglasses and the skater hat. He seems to be a new character. And the reason why I keep noticing him is he's driving a pizza truck with a little thing on the top that every time I see it, I think of Pixar's Pizza Planet truck.
I was just about to say Pizza Planet.
The little reference I loved here was that Will's science project is on Alan Turing. And I think it's really cool because past couple seasons, it's been suggested that Will might be gay. And Alan Turing was a victim of people not getting a fair shake in the past. Because Alan Turing was a homosexual, he couldn't get credit for all this work that he did for the British government. So I think that's a really nice little Easter egg and nod there for Will's character.
Normal.
The other thing we've seen in the past
Impossible.
is that Eleven just has not been doing well in California as far as socially integrating.
Well, she hasn't been socialized anywhere.
Right.
She wasn't even socialized in Hawkins.
Because she was
Yeah, that
raised in a lab.
Yeah. So why would she?
Every hamster I know in high school isn't doing well socially, It's kind of the same thing. But in past teaser trailers, we've also seen people shooting spitballs at her and things like that. It's funny because this is 80s California high school, and they've ripped it right out of 80s movies like Valley Girl and Fast Times at Ridgemont High. Everyone's wearing the colorful 80s gear in that scene, even in Hawkins. If you look in the scene in the bleachers of the basketball game, there's a girl right behind Mike that looks like she's basically cosplaying a Madonna video. So here we have that grandfather clock again, and it's in the wall of a hallway in the Hawkins High School. This is interesting because this goes into a little bit into some of the stuff we're going to see later on with Max. But one of the things I think is, this is one of my personal theories. You know, obviously the Duffer Brothers have said that Max is going to play a bigger role. I think Max might be experiencing two worlds at once in this season.
Well, one of the kids has to.
Yeah, she might be taking up the Will role this time around. But the difference, I think, is it's from the other side. Maybe Vecna, who through the Mind Flayer had his claws in Billy before, her brother, and was one of the minions of the Mind Flayer in season 3. Now that Billy's gone, maybe realizing that maybe this family blood might be vulnerable, is dipping into Max a little bit because...
Well, it's a weakness for her.
Right.
Like, they already had a strained relationship, but they had, like, it's been forever, so I could just be making this up, but, like, right before Billy dies, I'm pretty sure it was, like, the last thing he did was, like, some attempt at showing that he cared, or some type of redeeming himself.
Yes.
And so now she's got all these complicated feelings of things have never been good with me and my brother at any point. And then the one time I feel like there might have been hope for a good relationship, he's gone, and I can't process all of that. So that already leaves her vulnerable.
But you're absolutely right. This is almost like cult mentality with the Upside Down, because get them while they're vulnerable. You're not going to get much more vulnerable than Max at the end of season 3. That Max is probably experiencing these two worlds based on Vecna. And from just the little bit we're seeing in the trailer, I think she's dealing with it a lot better than Billy ever did. And I think that's kind of cool that the little sister is actually maybe stronger of will and soul than Billy was. I don't think that clock is in the wall there. I think maybe she's experiencing the real world, and maybe she has visions, or maybe this is stuff in her dreams, or maybe she's phasing in and out. Some people have suggested that the clock represents time travel is going to be a part of this season. And we do see that there are some flashbacks in this season. It also could just be the whole image of time counting down, that you're running out of time. That's the other thing that I love about Stranger Things is the perfect choices of music.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
they had me from season 1 by using The Clash and Joy Division and stuff like that. That was just brilliant. But this, how could you pick a better song than Journey's Separate Ways? Because that kind of says everything here.
The 80s of it all.
The 80s of it all.
On top of everything else.
So we saw Hawkins, and what a, shit show that is. Then we're transferred over to California, the sunny opposite of Hawkins, and what a horrible, world Eleven and Will are experiencing. Jonathan just looked grumpy in the back. And now we're taken to Russia, where we've learned from past trailers that Hopper, who is not dead, is actually in a gulag in Russia, and has been working on these railroad tracks. There's also been a lot of talk about what these railroad tracks might be for. I think that they're probably being used to take equipment to a portal to the Upside Down. Some people are saying that this portal is just the Russians' quick way to get to the United States. I think there's potential for that, but I think the main thing is to get into the Upside Down and kind of weaponize the Upside Down. I also think the Upside Down might have its own thing to say about all this with some of the stuff we're going to see later on. Hopper's not looking all that happy either, by the way. He's looking thinner. He's looking pissed off. Obviously.
Well, war prisoner.
Well, that or right before they
Siberian.
shot it, somebody showed him the reviews for Hellboy.
Boo. Press play. way.
Did you guys far from Hawkins?
But one of the things we've had in every season of Stranger Things is every season has been based around a holiday. We've had Christmas, we've had Halloween, we had the 4th of July. This, it's basically a kid's school vacation period / holiday. And this one's obviously going to be spring break. And it looks like Mike is able to go out and visit Will and Eleven, or Eleven comes out to Hawkins. I'm guessing by the clothing of everyone around them that this is probably California.
Yeah, because Will's right there, so
Yeah.
for the big trip and everything, it would probably be easier for Mike to go down there by himself.
Yeah.
Far from Hawkins. Because I thought you'd be safe.
I'm not 100% sure, but I'm like 95% sure that voice in the background is Dr. Owens, played by Paul Reiser, who kind of took over as head scientist for Hawkins Labs after Matthew Modine's Brenner disappeared, we'll say, instead of died.
Bye, Papa.
Bye, Papa. Because in season 2, when 11 and 8 go on their mission, they end up with the guy that abused them in the labs, who I know from movies like Identity, but especially Constantine, because he was being used by John Constantine as a twisted version of a priest. He, when they're about ready to kill him, he says, "I can take you to Brenner." And 11 says, "Papa's dead," or something to that effect. And he says, no, he's not. I can take you to him. He's very much alive. There's a lot of speculation. From what I've heard, there is, whether it's a flashback or otherwise, Matthew Modine is supposed to be making an appearance in this season. Whether or not it's in the flashbacks with 11 in the lab, or something else that has been suggested, which I think is really kind of cool, is the post-credit scene of season 3 shows the Russian guards going down the hallway of the cells of all the prisoners to feed one of them to the Demogorgon. And they go to this one door, and the other says, "No, not that one, not the American." And then they walk on, and that's the scene, which everyone goes, "Ah, Hopper's still alive." And then after that, all the teaser trailers are showing Hopper alive. Wouldn't this be a great twist if the prisoner that they had that they're talking about is actually Brenner? And, it's kind of like a red herring. Yeah, Hopper's still there too, but what if this other Russian prison, or maybe even the same one, also has Brenner, because they're trying to do all this upside down technology and investigation research? Or I could be pulling that totally out of my butt and be totally wrong. Here we have a package that Joyce receives, obviously from Russia. And I think from one of the previous trailers we saw, it's a Russian nesting doll, which is kind of cool.
That is
now,
cool.
In one of the other, I don't know if...
Russian nesting doll.
Russian nesting doll. If you look at one of the previous trailers, season 4, it's all focused on the Creel house and Victor Creel and his family. And there's a scene where the daughter is going down these stairs. And at the very bottom of the stairs are 2 dolls. The doll at the bottom of the stairs, one of them looks an awful lot like the Russian nesting doll. It's a regular doll, but it looks almost like a Russian doll, which I thought was interesting. Today is the perfect day to do this, because what she went to discover was a mutilated bunny at the bottom of the stairs. So, happy Easter, everybody. Obviously, Joyce is finding out a little bit about Hopper, because also one of the things, it wasn't necessarily in the trailer, but there was a phone number. Murray, I don't know if any of you remember Murray, the guy with the glasses and the beard that Nancy Wheeler and Jonathan stayed the night in his apartment.
Oh, yep.
And who befriended the Russian scientist who he took to the fair. Alexei, yes. There was a thing where you could call this phone number for his answering machine, and the message was something like, "You've reached Murray," I think it's Birnbaum or something like that. And please leave a message. If this is Joyce, please leave your number. I've been trying to reach you, which I thought was a nice little touch.
A war is coming. I'm afraid your friends at Hawkins are very much in the eye of the storm.
I don't have my powers.
I don't know how to say this other than just to say it. Without you, we can't win this war.
So that's a lot there. That's
Just so much.
so now we have Russia, we have Hawkins, we have California,
Haunted house.
Haunted House, and the government.
Remember how great it was to have Finn Wolfhard in that house on Nebolt Street? Let's do that again for this thing.
That actually, I'm going to get into that actually in a minute because I saw someone talk about something and I think it's brilliant. There are a couple things with this trailer and with the teaser trailers that no one's going to get, but that were pointed out that I think is absolutely brilliant. So we have the government involved with Dr. Owens, played by Paul Reiser. We have the meeting in a diner, and from what I gather, because of where they were filming, finding an actual old school diner was like really tough for the people who were doing the locations here. Basically saying to Eleven, you know, we can't win this war without you. And she's going, duh, I've lost my powers. And is probably saying, you know, I want no parts of this. But then we see her pulling away in a van because the government's like, oh, you're just a kid. You obviously don't know what's best for you. So we'll just take it in our hands and take you away against your will.
11, we need you. I'm retired.
And once again, this is a nod to like 80s movies that were headed by like Steven Spielberg and, you know, Donner and all those people, you know, E.T., Goonies, all these movies where the government thinks they know what they're doing and they end up screwing things up. But no, it's the adolescent kids who save the day and make everything okay. And then the government goes and gives a press conference and says, we've got everything under control. Speaking of the haunted house, we are obviously back in the Upside Down, although I'm not 100% sure, and I'm going to get to that in a second. But that's the Creel house in the distance there with the red bolt of lightning that we saw as a real house back in one of the teaser trailers. It was owned by Victor Creel and his family. The house was obviously, in a nod to The Shining, the house was obviously possessed by some greater force, which then forced him to kill his family. The scene in which you see him standing over his dead children is almost exactly right out of The Shining, which is very cool. Now, the other thing I found very cool is, first season we had the Demogorgon. Second season we had the Demodogs. Third season, we had the Mind Flayer. If you notice now, we have the Demo Bats, which are basically flying Demodogs. And here, there's something in the foreground.
Yeah.
It looks like it might be a playground or something. So that'll be really interesting when we get a flashback of the Creel house. The only other thing I thought it could be maybe was like a wrought iron gate of an estate across the street from them.
Like, it's been a while since I've watched it as well, but like you said, it reminded me of the Upside Down, and didn't it have weird plant life that kind of looked like that was like body almost shaped, like people sucked into the ground shaped? I'm not describing it well.
There were, I believe season 2 had a little bit with the pumpkin patch underneath the pumpkin patch.
Yeah.
The main
That
thing
might be
that we
what I'm
usually
thinking of.
the main thing we usually see with the Upside Down is the vines going over everything that just seem
Right,
to be
okay.
taking over everything, and that like ash/snow flurry kind of effect, which makes me question whether or not this is actually the Upside Down, because in some of these scenes we're seeing they've really pulled back on that snow flurry effect, ash effect, which makes me wonder, did they just decide to pull back on it, or is this maybe, you know, our planet in the future? Or in that interview with the Duffer Brothers, they also stated that they really, not only did they want kind of a haunted house kind of feel which I think they've definitely nailed, because that the Creel house kind of looks like right out of the Addams Family. But they also stated that in this season, one of the problems we're going to be faced with is that the Upside Down is actually leaking into our world.
Right, right.
Yeah, that's what I've been seeing. Like, I saw that when it was the end of season 1 and Will, like, coughed up the slug from in there and everything. It's like, when something's in there, you're supposed to stay in there. So if something comes back, we're going to come back and get you, type of a thing. So things from the Upside Down are always trying to make their way into the real world and worm their way out and kind of mesh the worlds together, because it's almost like they're trying to completely recreate the world above, but they can't. It's like they don't have enough, for lack of a better term, like, this is absolutely not the right word to use, but like almost like they don't have enough data or enough like DNA or what have you to like completely become whole and functioning, which is why it's all decayed and rotted and abandoned looking. So it's like they're trying to mesh everything together so it could just be one complete consciousness, which is kind of Lovecraftian if you think about it.
Oh, absolutely. And it's funny because like they've talked about wanting like a haunted house feel. They also wanted, because it was based in the 80s, they specifically said Pinhead and Freddy Krueger. And what's funny is they said that they never even considered Robert Englund because they just didn't think that he would ever agree to it. And he came to them saying he wanted to be involved.
Yeah.
How cool is that? So he's Victor Creel.
Nice.
Since we're on this, the thing I was talking about that like I don't think a lot of people are going to discover, but someone did and pointed it out, was that in the teaser trailer about the Creel house, they showed the beginning of this perfect house and the perfect family. They showed some newspaper headings and some microfiche. And for a play of the newspaper, a play on the Weekly World News, the Weekly World Watcher or something like that. But get this little Easter egg. The year on that newspaper was 1959. This year's season takes place in 1986. What is the importance of 27 years?
Well, that's it.
Pennywise appeared every 27 years. So I just think that's like a real deep cut Easter egg. That's awesome. Now, if that's not your typical haunted house, Addams Family house, I don't know what is.
On the other side.
Okay, so we got Steve with the same hair and Nancy there with looking very 80s. There's something going on with Steve's chest. Some people have suggested it was a chest tattoo. It just looks like, you know, Tom Selleck chest hair to me. But someone also suggested that it might be the Upside Down kind of giving him swamp bottom or something in his chest, but who knows. But I was talking about whether or not that we're going to be seeing the Upside Down here. This is the scene that made me question it. Between the Duffer Brothers saying that the Upside Down is leaking into our world, here we have the kids on their bikes, you know, the inspiration for that role-playing game. I think it's called Kids on Bikes. But there's none of that snow flurry effect. We see the vines taking over everything, the darkness of everything. But the kids aren't wearing hazmat or anything like that. They're not wearing any oxygen or any protective gear. They're just rolling through there. It makes me wonder whether or not this is actually the Upside Down, or is this part of our world that the Upside Down is kind of infiltrated.
I was convinced I was put here for some other reason.
So we got Hopper looking, you know, this guy's seen some shit, obviously, in the Russian gulag. But the epitome of it all is what you're going to see in a moment. Now this is one of two things. Either the Russians are getting their entertainment from using the prisoners, or this is a scene when the prisoners are trying to escape. So I'm not sure which it is, but either or, this is freaking epic and awesome.
Maybe I can still help. Even if it's the last thing I do.
If they're using the Demogorgon for like gladiatorial battles, I mean, that's awesome. This is the dungeon master for the Hellfire Club. I think
Okay.
his name is Eddie Brunson or something like that.
80s Matt
That's a
Mercer.
very
That's what I was going to say. It's like Heavy Metal Mercer.
yeah.
Heavy Mercer.
Heavy Mercer.
Heavy Metal.
Oh, that's good too. But yeah, I immediately thought Matt Mercer, and I also thought if his name is Eddie Bronson, it was not too far away from Eddie Munster, which I thought was kind of cool. With the Russian connection in the back on the left, there's obviously some Russian building symbolism there. Some people have said in the back there on the right, there's obviously some cosplay stuff hanging. But the thing that I'm loving is the DM screen there you see on the left that says Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. That's the actual Dungeon Master screen from AD&D back in the early 80s.
Heh.
Nice.
People say Hawkins is
So we've got 11 there, obviously in a flashback. They've obviously de-aged her and done a pretty good job. She's back there in the rainbow room. And here we have Lucas's little sister.
Erica, right?
Is it Erica?
Erica. Because she made a America joke.
Oh,
Like,
that's
you can't
right.
spell America without Erica.
I love the fact that for a lantern, it looks like she's using a bug zapper.
It does look like a bug zapper.
From the hair, we can tell this is Steve at a portal that's underwater. The thing I think that's kind of cool about this is this scene seems like it's ripped right out of all those monster movies where the person is trying to swim somewhere, whether it's under the castle or get away from the bad people or escape something, and they're swimming underwater in the dark. And then all of a sudden an eye opens up and it's like a whale or the monster or something. And they're like right there and the thing's looking at them. And that, I think Godzilla even had a scene like that, but it wasn't
Probably, yeah.
underwater. You know,
Small
the bad,
too.
yeah, the bad Godzilla with the, where Godzilla had Jay Leno's chin. That one I'm talking about with Matthew Broderick. And we were talking about Max with her powers and living in the two different worlds. A lot of people have said this is right out of the X-Men, her rising up like that.
Yeah, Dark Phoenix probably.
Exactly. The other thing I think is kind of cool is they mentioned the Duffer Brothers mentioned Pinhead. Barker, who wrote Hellraiser and directed it, also did a film called Lord of Illusions. And the main character is an illusionist named Swan. And the way he began all his Las Vegas shows was levitating down in just this pose. So I have to wonder if it's a little nod to that as well. The really cool thing here, though, is if you look at the tombstone, remember at the beginning I told you to pay attention to the tombstone? Back then it said Billy Hargrove. This one, looking a little brighter and a little newer, says William Hargrove. So whether that's a continuity error, something else, like I was saying, it could be something to do with Max's two different realities, maybe. But I love how Lucas, Steve, and Dustin just are like, what the F?
way off.
Steve battling shirtless a Demobat with what looks like a boat oar. And we had 11 dealing with soldiers who, to me, that looks like modern day. That doesn't look like it's a flashback. Poor Millie Bobby Brown can't keep a haircut to save her life, it seems. But she's also wearing the deprivation tank gear in that, I noticed. And some people wondered whether or not those are American soldiers or Russian soldiers. And then we have our loving Heavy Mercer or Heavy Metal DM playing metal on top of what looks like a trailer park in what could be the upside down, but obviously, you know, channeling his inner Mad Max Fury Road character. I think it's awesome. I think it's very, very cool. I also have to wonder if the whole purpose for this was not to be outrageous, but maybe he's doing this to draw away all the demo bats from the Creel house so that, you know, the gang can get in there and do what they need to do.
Kind of feels like a reference to Bat Out of Hell.
Wow, I didn't even catch that. That's awesome. Now,
there's our boy.
Yeah, there's Robert Englund, star of all the Nightmare on Elm Streets, also a movie based on Stephen King's short story, The Mangler. Now, a lot of people have questioned his eyes, and it looks like he's obviously sustained some damage to the eyes. Some people have said they think they maybe plucked out his own eyes. To me, they look white and milky and bulging in a weird sort of way, like they're just dead. So it does make me question whether or not, you know, the whole Vecna, Eye of Vecna thing will be used or not. But it's great to see England. He just looks as creepy as he always does.
Yup.
We've got, you know, obviously Murray and Joyce headed in a plane to Russia. We see in one of the teaser trailers that it crashes, which kind of is awesome because for them to be able to fly all the way to Russia without any problems just seems like a no-brainer. But here we have Dustin, to me, looking like he's one of the Ewoks from the ending of Return of the Jedi.
Give the kid a break.
Doesn't that look a little bit like with what he's wearing?
It's hard to tell. The palette's too dark.
Okay.
Yeah.
We have Steve bursting out of that portal. It's obviously from water. And if you look, he's trailing something behind him. I wonder if this is the sheet that was dangling when we saw him and Nancy earlier. So we see the claw of Vecna. A lot of people are saying it's Max. I think it looks like either Joyce or Robin myself, but I'm not so sure. Here we see Nancy's mom, Karen Wheeler, who back in season 3 went all cougar on us when Billy started lifeguarding, as did all the other milfy moms who decided no longer to be soccer moms, but decided to start getting dressed up to take their kids to the pool where Billy was kind of cougar hunting, as it was. So I think it's nice that we got a little nod to her. Notice the claw there. We're going to address that in a second. This is like a red hellscape. We've seen the red lightning in the past. In the distance there, running away from Vecna, we see Max. And in the distance, you see what looks like a setting sun, but I have a feeling is one of the portals getting bigger. And you can see 3 figures in there. So I have to wonder if Max is obviously running towards there, but I have to figure that's Dustin, Lucas, and Steve either coming to her or she stayed with Vecna to give them time to escape.
It's time.
So here we have Vecna. Now, some of the things I think are really interesting. We have all the tendrils coming off of him. That kind of is a nod to 3rd edition D&D, I think it was, that had Vecna with all these tendrils coming off. But they also look like all the vines and everything that's all over the Upside Down, meaning either he has control over them or they all kind of stem from him, and which kind of shows his reach. Now, the thing that I find most interesting, we saw that claw. If you look at Vecna here, the hand on the left looks like a normal human hand. The hand on the right looks like that claw. Now, as I mentioned before, Vecna, as the Lich, had the hand and the eye of Vecna. Back in the day of AD&D, when we used to play, usually Vecna would be mentioned, but you, as a DM, you weren't about to give up the eye or hand of Vecna to your players,
Right.
because it would break your game. After seeing Critical Role, people are like, oh, yeah, I'd go for the hand of Vecna. And because the thing is, if you wanted the eye of Vecna, you had to pluck out your eye and stick the eye in your own eye.
Yeah.
If you wanted the hand of Vecna, you had to cut off your own hand and stick on the hand. The eye and the hand are actually a nod to Michael Moorcock's Eternal Champion books, because there was an eye and a hand in that. Vecna actually had a lieutenant named Kos that he gave a sword to called the Sword of Kos. But Kos turned against Vecna, and I think he's the one who cut off his hand. But back then, magic items you didn't have common, rare, uncommon, anything like that. Magic items were listed as swords, rings, scrolls, or miscellaneous usually. Except there was a whole nother chapter on what they referred to as artifacts. And 2 of the greatest artifacts were the eye and the hand of Vecna. The difference between artifacts and magic items had a set power or powers.
Right.
Artifacts you rolled on miscellaneous tables for what they would be. You got so many powers for certain artifacts, but you also rolled on another table, which gave all the artifacts curses. So you had all these negative things that would happen too. DMs loved the idea of using Vecna, but were really hesitant about giving up the eye or the hand of Vecna. But back then, long before Critical Role, where it made the hand and eye cool, players were like, I don't want to cut off my hand. I don't want to pluck out my eye. You keep that. I'm good.
You don't have a sword or anything.
Exactly. Hey, can we roll on another table?
Yeah.
The only other thing that I find interesting, if you look in the lower right, there's a little red thing. I have no idea what that is, but it's bright red and just stands out. It probably is nothing. It's probably meaningless. It's to the left of the end of Netflix. I just wonder what the hell that is. But yeah, I'm just so psyched as Vecna, because there's so many possibilities here. And because the hands are different, I really think the hand of Vecna is going to play a huge part in this. I'm not sure how or why. I just think it's going to play a big part. I think that's really cool.
You have lost.
I'm looking forward to it.
Me too.
There will be lots of
Looks like a
unpacking to
lot
do
of-
once the show's there. But yeah, I think this breakdown was about as long as the session.
But we only had one bunny in this breakdown.
Yes, exactly. More bunnies, then we'll do it.
Okay, deal.
Don't tempt him. He'll do it. He'll find a
But they
way.
have to be bunny Kongs. They have to be bunny Kongs.
They have to be Chungus bunnies.
Yes.
I'm good with stopping at Chunga bunnies.
Perfect.
Okay. Everyone, thank you for joining us. Thank you for being a part of this and bearing with our little, or my specific, mental masturbation, as it were. It wasn't our normal episode. We're a little bit more D&D and adventure and roleplay focused, but it was a nice little switch considering what happened. Once again, we are a live D&D stream. We air every Sunday night on Twitch at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You can find us at Grognard and Friends. And you can catch up on previous episodes, of which there are quite a few, on YouTube, also at Grognard and Friends. So tune in this Sunday on Twitch. Watch us live. Same Grognard time, same Grognard channel. We hope to see you then. Thank you for joining us. No matter what you do, wherever you go, what we do ask is that you be kind.